I'm not here for you. I am here for the dreams and the aspirations of your parents and grandparents. And I am here for the promise of legacy that you're leaving to your children and grandchildren. You're the guy I get to talk to.
So hello again and welcome back. Welcome to another show of the Conscious Accelerator Experience. And today I have another member of the team, the wonderful John King, who's made time to join us from a glorious place in Mexico. It's hard to introduce John in just one sentence, but I first came across John through his book, The Tribal Leadership, which I think it's definitely one of the top 20 books or something. It's got some extraordinary accolades, so congratulations. But that really had an effect on me. I was working in corporate at the time in London, and this book became our way of thinking. And it's in many ways, it's so simple and yet so effective. So welcome, John. Thank you, first of all, for writing that amazing book and impacting so many people. I have to say, it's well, one of the shining examples of a great leadership book. So,
thank you. You know, you're very, very gracious, Lawrence, and I really appreciate the kind words. The truth about it is, who knew? You write it and you put it out there because this is my best offer, and this is what I think is my value add proposition, and and then there's thousands of books like that are written a year, but when it caught on and then went to #1 and then became one of the top 20 books, who knew?
Really, it was more of you didn't think this is a bestseller when I was writing it.
No, I literally did not have a thought about that. I had a thought about how can I authentically get down on paper what it is that I've been working with and that I know that works, because it's all about relationship. And so I know that these ideas work for people and they work in organizations. So let's just write it down. And who knew? It took off and did real well. It's funny, the tribal part is, my father is a geologist and he was a field geologist. And so my family lived out in the desert on Indian reservations. And for a while, we lived in the Hopi Nation of Oribe, Arizona. And so when I saw that how people talk and how people operate and how people structure their relationships and so on like that, the more I looked at it, the more I thought, this is tribal.
Right.
And so I just began talking to that and distinguishing out tribal. And the amazing thing that happened, like one of those serendipitous things, Lawrence, was that the very week that we published Tribal Leadership, Seth Godin, who is a genius.
I love Seth. Yeah, he's
he put tribes out.
Okay.
And so we kind of I think we rode on his coattails.
Right.
Because it suddenly became, this is a viable, interesting, useful conversation, the whole thing. So what can I do? And then when people in leadership positions wanted to, well, what are you distinguishing as leadership? It just kind of fell together. So it was that kind of a blessing.
It's
and what I saw was that, mostly, and it's been my experience, mostly what people had been doing is they had been teaching management at a kind of on steroids and calling it leadership. And it was annoying to me. I was lecturing at the University of Southern California in the business school. And everybody was teaching management, and there were no distinctions of leadership at all. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there and let's see what happens. It turns out people are hungry for that kind of a conversation. And, we were talking a little bit earlier and you said, balance and equilibrium is so critically important. And I have to tell you that in the notion of triads, which I talk about, the contextual triad for all of my work is something called strength, balance, and flexibility.
Really? How
And
interesting.
where I got it, you know, things come from strange places, and I got it from yoga.
Really?
And uh,
Of
and
course.
what I knew was that strength, balance, and flexibility. Everybody has one. Some people have two. Nobody's got all three. So you have to put people together that actually fill in the holes in your game. So I'm a guy who was at the time was very flexible. I needed to surround myself with people who were well balanced and
Mm,
who had great strength like that. And we would form our little kind of partnership groupings. And if we did it correctly, if we did it in a way where we were surrendered to each other and we were surrendered to some kind of greater vision, something I like to call a noble cause, if we were surrendered into that and we were all aligned on that, we could actually do some pretty amazing stuff. So strength, balance, and flexibility. So I so much appreciate, you know, when you brought that up about
sure.
uh,
It is all about balance, isn't it? You realize this is
it
a higher
is,
order, and when
it
we're in
is,
balance, we're healthy. I want to
it
just
is.
there's so many things I'd like to ask you, but maybe since we've talked about tribal leadership, it will be useful for the listeners just to understand, because you've got like 5 stages, I think it is, of and
Yeah,
maybe if you could
you
just
do.
talk
Yeah,
through those. And I'm conscious also that when you wrote the book, the world was very different, and over the last year we've had a whole change, and a lot of people are now out of balance and are reviewing culture, reviewing leadership, reviewing everything, how and where we work. And we had that conversation a little bit earlier as well. But maybe if you could just share with us those 5 stages,
sure.
and what that looks like, that would be great.
Yeah, and as I say this, so they're in ascending order, stages 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're two separate conversations. So I'll separate them out. The first conversation is linguistic. It's how people talk at the level of stages 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the ones that are really the operative stages are 2, 3, and 4. But stage one is not you, it's not me, it's not anybody we know. It's people who are usually institutionalized or incarcerated. It's about 3% of the population. They are undermining. They undermine every culture that they're in. They're kind of by themselves, so they have a feeling of being alienated. And they have a language that if you threw a net over all of their language, the language is life sucks.
Right.
So that's about 3% of the population. Stage 2, however, comes into play very powerfully next, and that's you and me on a bad day. So you and me on a bad day, what happens is we're ineffective. So this stage is called ineffective. And in the ineffective stage, what happens is we're not alienated, but we feel separate from others. So if you'll notice that when people are ineffective, they're not connected to other people. And given that what we are is we are social, the more profoundly we can be connected to one another, the more effective we're going to be. So what happens is that at the level of ineffective stage 2, you and me on a bad day, is we don't say life sucks, but we do say my life sucks.
Got it.
See, I can see that yours works. And if I had your curly hair, or if I had your MBA, or I had your connections or something, like my life would, but I don't, so it doesn't. And so that's stage 2.
Got it.
And it's a kind of a position where the people are suffering. They feel that they're not being understood, listened to, heard. They're not connected.
Okay.
Where you run into this a lot is when you go your very first few days on a job, or
Mm,
when your first few days when you went into university, or went to a new situation, and you're not connected to anybody,
mm,
and you're ineffective, and your life
mm.
sucks.
No, I can see that, and I guess you're feeling almost threatened by the
You're feeling
environment there.
threatened. You're feeling like a martyr. You're feeling like nobody gets you. My
Mm.
mom used to say, "Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to the garden and eat worms." You
That
kind
really,
of feel that way about it.
yeah.
Stage 3 is connected at the navel to stage 2. They are symbiotic. They depend on each other. Stage 3 is useful. People who are useful, they get rewarded for their work. They are effective at what they do. They have a relationship to people who are ineffective because they are hierarchical. They're competitive. They've won the game, and the way that they talk is they don't say life sucks or my life sucks. What they say is I'm great. And in the way of saying I'm great, in the silence, Lawrence, they say, and you're not, and I have the stats to prove. So these are very competitive people. This is where sports works out. This is a zero-sum game sort of thing where there's a winner and a loser, and stage 3 is the winner, stage 2 is the loser.
Interesting.
They will lie, cheat, and steal.
Got it.
Stay where they are.
Interesting. So very, very ego-centered.
Oh, very, very ego-centered. And the point of it is they're not alienated, they're not separate, but they're interested in one thing, and that is personal domination.
Got it.
So that's stage 3. Well, all of that is what we do is a me kind of relationship in the world, and that's how they talk. Stage 4 is where real leadership begins. It's where health begins, by the way. So the people who are at stage 4 have had some kind of an insight. And part of the insight is this. Everybody thinks they're a good team player. They're not. People think they're a good team player in a kind of a star and supporting cast kind of milieu, as long as I'm the star. But the reason that people are not good team players is because, generally speaking, people are not good partners. We've learned partnership at stage 3 and stage 2, so it's junior partner, senior partner, which is a nice way of saying master slave. And it doesn't have a co-equal kind of relationship. Well, at stage 4, people consciously design a non-zero sum positive outcome game where we're in this together and we win or we lose together. And in this game, it's called important. These are important relationships. And in these important relationships, rather than saying, life sucks, my life sucks, I'm great, you're not, they actually consciously shift gears and they say, we are great together.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And they start operating out of we are great together. And in we are great together, what they begin to design is stable and effective partnership. Once you've learned stage 4 and you've learned how to create stable and effective partnerships, then you are actually ready to do important work in life. So this is where leadership begins. This is where balance occurs. This is where resonant values are exchanged. This is where the tone of it, rather than win-lose, the tone of it is one of respect and dignity. So I
love that,
grant a certain kind of dignity. And not only that, but I find out what you do that actually fills in the hole in my game. And I have a great amount of respect for that.
This is wonderful. So this is win-win, isn't it? This is where win-win starts.
And this is where the game really begins. And the difference between, say, stage 3, a person who's useful, if you take a look at what they produce in life, if they go to stage 4, which is rare, by the way, but if they go to stage 4 with the same amount of effort or maybe less, they produce anywhere from 3 to 5 times as much.
Absolutely. Which figure?
So the idea of productivity is this.
And this concept of high performance culture, a lot of companies are looking for a high performance culture, and this is around you need to be operating.
Yeah, I worked for several years with a company called Zappos. And Zappos is a marketing company, an online marketing company. And the guy who was running it, a fellow named Tony Hsieh, genius, and they were not what we call chopped liver when I got to them. They had a game, they had a clue, but they read the book. And by the time I got to them, what they were doing, we noticed that there were tons of tribal leadership was being bought by the same guy every week. And anytime anybody came through it, they would give them a copy when they did the tour. So when I arrived, they gave me a copy of my own book and we did the tour. And this was the most harmonious, collaborative, fun, crazy kind of work environment I think that I'd ever seen, because they had permission to be great. They had permission, and Tony and Albert and Fred, the guys who put the company together, were kind of like surrendered to the whole process and just watching it unfold. And this is where I saw that what they were practicing was virtues of health and well-being for everybody in the program, everybody that was working there, and a certain level of practicing the virtue of justice. And in so doing, if you came to work for them, Lawrence, you would work for them. They had two locations. They had their call center, which was in Las Vegas, 24-hour call center. And then in Lexington, Kentucky, across the country, right next to the UPS station was their warehouse where they sent everything out.
Right.
They would make a promise, and their promise would be that you would have your delivery in 5 days and you would get it the next day. So you'd start out with, boy, you're just delighted. Then as you opened the package of what they were selling you, there would be a return form in there, and the postage was already paid and it was already filled out. Wow. So you take it out, you try it on. If you didn't like it, put it back in the box, tape it up, and give it right back to them. And it was mailed back, and they would send you another one.
Wow.
So let's say you went to work in Las Vegas and you worked there for about a month or 6 weeks, and then they sent you across the country for a month and a half to work in Lexington, Kentucky, where you were boxing things up and sending things out. So you learned their business, the key aspects of their business. And then when you came back, you had your own interview, kind of a debrief with one of the principals of the company. And at some point in that conversation, they would take $2,000 in cash and put it on the desk. And they would offer you the cash if you would quit. Nobody took the cash. That's the kind of company they were. So I was there. It was 10:30 in the morning. You don't think they're doing anything. It looks like it's all playtime. It is awesome. And I'm looking at this kind of running tally. And they kept their tally from midnight on, 10:30 in the morning. Now, we got interrupted because a conga line of about 10 people with costumes on came through dancing a samba and just taking a dance break. And when they got through, but I looked up on the scorecard and they had done $23.5 million since midnight.
Amazing, amazing.
And not one person in the call center was being tracked on whether they were selling anything or not. What they were there was to provide service in such a way that if you were interested and wanted to talk about shoes, somebody would talk about shoes with you. And if you never made an order, not a problem.
That's amazing.
Not a problem.
Amazing.
Phenomenal business model. And all it did was just kind of validate that I thought that, people should have fun. They should be in kind of relationships that are balanced and that are healthy and and they took it to an art form.
That is amazing. And it's very based on trust, that kind of environment, the whole thing, because it's trust. You can see like stage 4, there's trust with team members, but also trust with customers, trust with everything. And
well, it was really beyond trust in a certain peculiar way, Lawrence, in the sense that it was really meritorious. And there was, they did have a rule, and it's the rule, it basically is the rule of stage 4. I think this is why Tony liked what we did. The rule of stage 4 is no free riders. So there were no free riders. So you're going to get in, you're going to contribute, and as long as you're rocking and rolling with them and everything, you're going to do fine. Like that. We're not going to score you on what you're selling. We're going to score you on almost like an attitude check. And here's what we discovered. We discovered that when merit was present, trust was automatically present. So it was really, the relationships were based on merit, trust in the background. The
Mm,
reason being that when trust is in the foreground, it'll get violated
yes.
always.
Yes.
And once violated, never recovered.
Mm,
So let's have merit in the foreground. If that's violated, we can cover, we can recover, we can correct. And in the back, we haven't violated trust.
mm. I think this is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that example. I mean,
Yeah,
it really brings that
it's
to
a
life.
huge, it's
Mm,
a huge concept that is part of stage 4.
mm,
And so in stage 4, that's it. You know, you're in meritorious relationships where they're stable and effective, collaborative. And what it allows you to do is every once in a while, the universe calls on you and they say, how would you like to do something that's going to make history? That's what stage 5 is. Stage 5 is not a particular level that you hold. So there's nobody stays there, but you go to stage 5 and you collaborate with other teams like you have who are working on something common in common, and you are doing something that is vital meaning life altering, life giving. And in this is where team shows up. And how come team works here is because you did partnership earlier. So now we're just partnering team. And then instead of life sucks, my life sucks, I'm great, you're not, we're great together, the upper level is one of life is great. Because when you're doing something, I mean, you could just imagine, don't you think that Elon Musk gets to the end of his day and goes, you know what, life is great? Got a thing going. And Richard Branson, and
mm,
you know, people who are actually making it happen in a way that is attractive to people and got it going. So the first way you look at it is you look at the way that people talk.
mm.
Then you have to ask the question as a leader, do people lie? And the answer is yes. And then the question is how often? And the answer is all the time. In fact, every time. So what do we do? Because people will represent themselves as win-win. They will represent themselves as we are great together until push comes to shove. And when push comes to shove, it becomes, hold on, I'm great, you are not. And the other person going, well, my life sucks.
It's
And
so
there you are, caught in that
interesting.
toggle.
Yeah.
So what we found is that the way that we organize our structures, how we work together, when you look at them, at stage 4, everybody's connected to everybody is connected to everybody. Everybody has, it's like the internet. Everybody has access to all the information all the time. And everybody is regarded inside of dignity, inside of respect. Everyone uh, does something that a friend of mine calls leads from their current position.
Right. I love
So
that.
stage 4 is a lead from your current position kind of place. And then we come together and wow, you get out there and you do something amazing. Then you go home and you do your war stories and you talk about it and you wait around for the next call from the world to go out there and do something astonishing.
So if you step right back, so you've got those 5 stages, and I think we all relate to those stages, and you can see, and I guess the thoughts that go through my mind is like, which stage do I operate in? So I've definitely experienced many of those stages, and I've experienced stage 5, stage 4, and again, thinking about different work contexts. But is there a practical way of really identifying where you are? Because it's quite fluid, you move back and forward based on
Yeah,
different,
well, it's two
events.
things. One is listening closely to the netted out conversation about people talk, because stage 3 is pretty much I'm great and you're not, and you can hear it, and generally we kind of step over it.
Mm,
Here's what you need to know: stage 2 and 3, when you put them together, that's the world of management for openers. And second of all, that's about 75% of all everybody.
got
So
it.
roughly 50% of the people are at stage 3 at any given time. Roughly 20, 23, 24% are at stage 2 at any given time. So mostly the default, what is called, do you know this expression, the throne position?
I don't know.
Okay, if you took dice and you just threw them and you just got what came up, that's thrown. So stages 1, 2, and 3 are thrown for
Correct.
human. We just do that naturally.
Mhm.
Okay. Stage 4 and 5 are designed. So that's distinct from thrown. When
Okay.
you understand that you've been living a thrown life, you become interested in how do I design a life? And one of the things that you understand, or you come to uh, kind of a presence to, is that what it is to be a human being is to be ultra social.
Mm,
And if I'm trying to do this on my own or be better than or whatever, I'm just doing some version of master slave.
mm,
But if I could actually create a tribe where we were aligned on something that was a worthwhile vision, that and people were in the tribe because they chose their way in
mm,
and they had the capability of leading from their current position. They had, and the tool that they brought, the specialty that they brought was two things. One is they had a meritorious skill set that we could use. And the second is they were surrendered to the tribe.
yes, of course.
So if I'm surrendered to the greater good or the tribe or the vision like that, we are having wholly different kinds of conversations. At the level of stage 2 and 3, the conversations that are occurring are about commitment, integrity, responsibility, and accountability. But Lawrence, if you were um, training to go to the Olympics,
Mm,
and you really knew that you had an opportunity if you got there and you did your best, you had an opportunity to medal in the Olympics. So you are going for the gold. Okay, you really are. It's not just a nice idea. You're training for this. And I were your coach. And I came in and I had a conversation with you that was about commitment, integrity, responsibility, and accountability. You would fire me in a heartbeat. That is a lower level junior conversation. Now, it's the one you hear, it's the one that you hear all the time. But champions are interested in conversations that are in their ascending or descending order: noble cause, vision, mission, goals, and accomplishments.
mm,
And they're interested in what am I doing today that is actually going to get me to my goal, which is going to actually fulfill on my mission, which is actually going to uh, get me to the point where I have actually created the vision and fulfilled on the vision, which has me to the point where that was the noble cause. So if you're an Olympian, if you're a champion,
mm.
then I'm going to have conversations with you on the level of noble cause, vision, mission, rather than commitment and integrity. Now, this is different, but at stage 2 and 3, that's all they're having is the commitment, integrity conversation.
Mm.
At stage 4, the only conversation we're having is the vision, mission, noble cause, and what'd you do today? It's a different quality.
Completely
Because
different
why?
conversation.
Because I'm interacting with you, and it's an act of grace to grant that you are actually inside of a partnership with champions.
Mm,
But that's your attitude.
mm. So this word attitude comes up
Yeah.
regularly. So it very much is an attitude of the
Yeah.
thing.
It's designed.
Mm,
So throne is, well, I don't have any proof that he blah blah blah. That's my throne conversation. So therefore he's very ordinary and in fact not good enough, and I'm great and he's not.
mm.
That's what you're given.
And that,
Driven by the throne conversation. But in the created design conversation, it's this is my partner, Lawrence. He is astonishingly good at this. He's a guy who's got my back. So our relationships become character based.
mm,
Now, here's the deal: virtue forms character, and character unfolds destiny. So if we practice the virtues, virtues are practices of excellence. If
mm,
we practice the virtues, it forms our character. And our character unfolds our destiny, which is to say, our vision, our mission, our noble cause.
That all makes sense. So relationships, you've touched on that word quite a few
Yeah,
times. I mean, the whole thing to operate,
yeah,
there's a bit about self, understanding yourself and
yeah,
understanding where you are. And then there's also a piece around understanding the people that you mix with, your tribe, because that
yeah,
will, that either lifts everyone up or pushes everyone down. You know, and
yeah,
often the work I do, you talk to companies about culture change, and the cultures with this lens are clearly operating at a 2 or a 3 in many instances, and want to actually progress. But what are your thoughts about relationships and really, you know, because we're in the age of collaboration, a lot of people are talking about collaborating, but
yeah.
collaboration requires relationships that are based on
Yeah, mostly I see collaborate according to my definition of collaboration, and I will like it.
exactly.
So
Yes,
that's
it's
that. But here's the deal.
mm,
I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you're an architect. I don't care if you're in real estate. I don't care if you're in finance or you do tax returns or what form of business you do, or if you're a professional dancer or an artist. Let's take the case of real estate. You have to understand you're not in the real estate business. You're in the relationship business.
mm,
And God gave you real estate as a vehicle. So I was a professional dancer at a time in my life many pounds ago. And I was in the relationship business, and I had been granted dance as a vehicle to be related to people.
mm,
Whatever it is you do, you design training programs. Well, you're not that's not the business you're in. You're in the relationship business, and your vehicle is your skill set at being able to put people together, to put powerful programs together. So relationship is the number one base distinction of what it is to be human together.
mm.
And it starts from the inside. So leadership is an inside out thing. And so you work on yourself first. And the way you work on yourself is you work inside. Aristotle said there are moral virtues that are internal, they're cardinal virtues. And the 4 cardinal virtues are courage, temperance, which is about managing your emotions, justice, which is about right and wrong,
Mm,
and prudence, which is about the way that you make your choices and decisions in life. Those are the virtues that you practice for your internal self. And then there are the external virtues. He called them the intellectual virtues, but they're the way that you interact in the world. And I messed with them a bit, but I'd say the first one is your word. Your word to the world is sacred.
yes.
Mostly talk is cheap, but
Mm,
with a true leader, words are sacred.
mm,
The second one is your vision, because you have to have, see, leadership is a distinction that is granted by permission of those being led. So therefore, if I don't have your permission, you're not going to follow me at all. But if I have your permission, you will follow me through hell to get to where it is that we want to go together. So word and vision. Then the third virtue is something called nous, N-O-U-S, which means mind, but it really means your intuition
mm,
and trusting your intuition. And then the fourth external uh, virtue is wisdom. So you got these 8. You got courage, temperance, justice, and prudence. And then you got your word, you got vision, you got your intuition, and you got wisdom. Practicing those are called cardinal virtues. And the word cardinal means hinge. So when you practice that virtue, it opens the gate for many other practices to come in.
right. Wow.
And you build yourself that way. And
Mm,
it sets you up to answer the 4 critical questions that a leader has to answer. And the 4 critical questions is, am I the right one? Is this the right place? Is this the right time? And do I have the right plan? So you practice those virtues to support the 4 questions. This is an Aristotelian conversation,
mm.
because I don't think we've come a long ways since Aristotle, frankly, in the area of action.
I think that's wonderful. It really simplifies it. And those 4 questions that we ask ourselves, regularly. Do you have like a structured process around how you answer those questions and how you?
Yeah, well, I present it to people, and what I do is I draw like a clock face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and around the clock face at 12, 3, 6, and 9, I put the 4 leadership questions: the one, the time, the place, and the plan. And then at 2 and 3, I put courage and temperance. And at 4 and 5, I put justice and prudence. And I do a yin yang thing. And I make it, that's the dark part. That's the yin part. That's the inner part of who you are. And then the yang part is at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock on the clock face is your word and then vision. And then at 10 and 11 is intuition and wisdom. So it shows like a clock face that is really in yin and yang. And I call the tool Aristotle meets Lao Tzu.
I love that. That is so good. It's so simple and yet so effective. That's why I really love it, because it is very practical and you can understand where you are and and work on yourself first.
Well, yeah, you're right. First of all, children can get this. They really can, because they have no resistance to it. Oh yeah, okay, that, okay, next. But the thing about it is, it allows you, when you go to 1 o'clock, now we can have a courage conversation. Now, a virtue, Aristotle said, is the practice of the habit of choosing the mean between the extremes of too little and too much in the matter of your actions and your emotions. This is why when you were a child, you were taught some version of a story called Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Turns out, if you go to Russia, they have a story called Masha and the Three Bears. And if you go to Southeast Asia, they have a Three Bears story. If you go to Mexico, they have a story about a girl with little red curls and 3 bears. So why were you taught this question? Why is it taught universally? Is to teach you the mean between the extremes. She goes into the house. One chair is too big, one's too small, one's just right. She goes to the kitchen. One porridge is too hot, one is too cold, one is just right. She goes into the bedroom. One bed is too soft, one is too hard, another is just right. You are being taught the golden mean. Now, your mom didn't know that, or your dad didn't know that, but that's what it is. So you take a look at courage, and courage is the mean between too little courage is cowardice. Too much courage is recklessness. So you're choosing the mean between cowardice and recklessness when you choose courage. And you choose it all day long, every day. In temperance, it's about your emotions. Lack of emotions is apathy. Too much emotion is hysteria. So temperance is the mean between too little and too much, apathy and hysteria. So practice the virtue. Prudence. We all know people who make a snap decision. They snap decision. They don't gather the information. They don't take the time to consider it. They just make a snap decision. Imprudent. Or we also know other people make us crazy, who gather information and then they gather, and 3 more years later, they're still gathering information. They never come to their decision. My little sister, for example, she didn't get married, and she had guys chasing her. And I said, why? Why did you never get married? And she said, John, she said, it took me 18 months to decide on the wallpaper in my kitchen. Imprudent.
Yeah, it's this word equilibrium again, isn't it? It's finding that balance.
It is exactly the right word. Exactly the right word. And balance. So there you are. So we're choosing for that, and we're choosing for virtue. The practice of virtue, the aggregate of virtues that you practice, forms your character.
Mm.
Now, your character is what I want to be in relationship with.
Sure.
And the relationship has three certain levels. There's a level called character. There's a level called utility. Most businesses are on the level of utilitarian.
Mm.
So, and they're kind of what's in it for me.
Mm.
And then there's the lowest level, which is pleasure. You know, you and I like to go bowling. So we go bowling, and then you get tired of bowling. We have no more relationship.
Right. Got it.
Or we do business and what's in it for me, but then you decide, well, you know, there's not enough in this for me, whatever, and you're gone. Utilitarian. So all relationships at stage 4 are character-based relationships. Those are, I got your back, you got my back, we got each other's back. I'm in this with you, and we are both zeroed in on and aligned on the noble cause, the vision, and the mission.
So,
Yeah. That's how
so,
you build champions.
and is that what you do? Like when you work with an
Yeah.
organization, that's what you would do. You help
That's
them.
exactly the conversation that I have.
Yes, it's what words are we using, where are we now, and then how. So there's a lot of inner transformation required to really shift, because word, when you speak, a word that comes to my mind a lot is unlearn. You know, I've been doing some work with indigenous cultures here in Australia, and it's been very interesting because a lot of what they teach and have done for, you know, thousands of years is tribal leadership, how to operate at a stage 4, stage 5 level, and it's almost ingrained in the cultures from a very young age.
It is.
In our culture, we have a different way of teaching, if you like, or we have done, certainly. And some of those more stage 3 principles, i.e., there's not enough to go around, and those types of things can encourage a stage, let's call it a stage 3 level of thinking.
They lock you in. They lock you in. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I like to say to people, Lawrence, is this. You know, I have a room full of people who've come to get leadership training, and I say, you know, and the first thing to do is acknowledge that everybody in the room, whatever got them in the room, you know, there's something about that. And generally speaking, people have been there. They've had 5 or 6 different leadership training before. So it's very, very much a danger that it's going to be, oh, another one of these. And they kind of phone it in. So here's what I say. I'm not here for you. I'm not here for you. I am here for the dreams and the aspirations of your parents and grandparents. And I am here for the promise of legacy that you're leaving to your children and grandchildren. You're the guy I get to talk to.
That is an amazing thing. I think I'm going to borrow that line and credit you for that. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not going to be I'm not having a management conversation. I am not going to have a conversation with you about what is it that you're going to accomplish in the next 90 to 120 days. And oh, by the way, it's a matter of your commitment and your integrity and your accountability. I'm not going to have that conversation. That's insulting. You are a champion. I'm going to have a conversation that began the day that your oldest grandfather was born and will end when your youngest grandchild dies. It's about 150 years. So you want to look that you are part of the chain of leadership that has been passing through your family. And you want to get that the question that you are organized around, if you are really smart, is who are my partners? And you put down my parents and my grandparents and my children, my grandchildren. Then, Lawrence.
You can move forward. That's it. That is so amazing and so joined up in terms of the whole approach. It begins, and you realize that you as an individual have a lot more power. The whole theme of the Singularity Youth Summit is about unleashing your superhero. So there's 2 things that really tie in. So one of them is unleashing your superhero, tying to this premise that we all have inner power, and we need to learn how to unleash that to create a better world. And then the other is a future by design, and that you as an individual can create a vision for the future, and then create a tribe who share that vision and want to work with you to turn that vision into a reality. So thank
Yeah, literally, that's a extremely succinct uh, distinguishing of what stage 4 is.
you. I love it. I mean, it really works for me, and it ties in this whole thing around wellness being. It's something you mentioned during the Zappos example, is that wellness, trust, they're all in the background. And I think as soon as you make these things, and that's how it should be, if you're a part of stage 4, then you
Yeah.
care about the wellness and the well-being of your tribe, because you've got everyone's back. So why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
And it becomes
If you look at it, Lawrence, if let's say inside of our relationship, if trust is an issue, there is no trust.
so true.
If love is an issue, there's no love.
Mm.
But if it is a living, breathing kind of distinction that is really literally the ecology of our relationship, because that's what you are as a leader, is you're an ecologist, and you're creating a kind of ecology or environment for people to flourish in.
Yes.
And your job is to not mess with the people. Your job is to tend to the ecology of things. Keep working for people.
Keep
Successful and powerful, effective leaders are the kind of people who are kind of always looking at the context of things and dealing with the what I call the clearing. Dealing with the clearing and keeping it clean and pure and straight and right, because people get in and they clutter things up, and they put debris in there, and they put gossip in there, and they put all kinds of attitudinal things and points of view and being right. And I mean, at stage 2 and 3, there's only 2 things humans care about, which is being right and looking good. That's all they care about. So that's all. So your clearing is filled up with people being right and looking good and making others wrong and everything. There's no workability. Stage 4 is a platform of workability, but it's designed. It's not thrown.
You design. I love this. You're as a leader, you're an ecologist. I haven't thought of, we use words like ecosystem a lot, but being an ecologist, I think that metaphor really, really helps. It also kind of touches on the point that, because often you can think of a leader as someone who has formal responsibility, which I guess is more of a manager, whereas a leader can be anyone, anyone who is willing to do that work, and will create anyone who's willing to champion.
Listen, the newest guy in can provide leadership. My friend, his name is Wayne Pollard, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel and highly decorated in the Army. Flew helicopters. He taught leadership at West Point, which is our military academy. This guy knows something about it, okay? And he invented a whole distinction around what he called lead from your current position. So whoever you are, you have an access to leadership. You may not be the manager. You may not be the one who's accountable. You may not be the one who's, but you can definitely provide leadership. You can get up underneath people. You can, and when you have, we have in our military, we have an elite group called the U.S. Navy SEALs. And a U.S. Navy SEAL team is generally 5 people. And there's somebody who is a ranking officer. He would be like the equivalent of a colonel or a commander. And then you have people that are in descending orders, a lieutenant, a couple of sergeants. And then there's some people who are like very private. However, each and every person in the SEAL team has a specialty. And when it's time for that person's specialty to be the on point specialty, that person is the leader, and the commander follows. The lieutenants follow. and they follow the private, who knows? So in the military, they are called these people who are out there and they were doing that. A lot of times they're by themselves, are in direct communication with the general back at headquarters, and they're called the tip of the spear. And they're providing leadership and data so that the general can make prudent decisions.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, and there's so much. I think I could talk to you for another 2 hours at least, because we haven't even touched.
Loving you're so gracious.
We haven't even touched on your journey to tribal leadership. Like, I know you started as a dancer, and I'd love to ask you about that. But maybe in the time we've got, we should talk about where we are now in the current context and the work you're doing with the Conscious Accelerator team and how that has evolved. So you wrote the book. When did the book come out? What year did Tribal Leadership
come out? The book came out 2011, so it's an old book.
So we've got 10 years, and like the world has changed a lot in 10 years.
A lot.
But the principles, everything we've talked about, are as relevant today as they've always been. Exactly what you were saying about Aristotle.
They're based on classic principles.
Classic principles. People are people, and we all have that journey to travel, and finding equilibrium, as I call it. The tools that you've shared will really help us. This concept around leadership is an inside out thing. I think really summarizes the whole thing, because when the world around us can feel very chaotic, we can bring that inner equilibrium, that inner calm, and start to move forward. And it does give you a huge sense of empowerment. So what's happened since the book came out? So you said it was it feels like the world needed the book, and Seth Godin's publishing plan and yours came together, and now we use the word tribe a lot in what we're doing. But what's happened since, and how has the Conscious Accelerator come into the picture?
Well, the kind of the quick and easy version of that is, book was published 2011. I was at the time lecturing at the University of Southern California in this Marshall School of Business and the Price School of Public Policy, and I saw that I was kind of done with that. You know how you're done with a certain part of your life and you're looking around for what's next. And so, and I decided that I wanted to be back in New Mexico. My mother was about 97 at the time. Okay. And so I wanted to be back and around my mom and so on like that. So I dissolved my business relationship and dissolved my relationship with the university, went back to New Mexico wondering what was next. And a guy who had been on faculty at C.B. Richard Ellis University with me several times came to me and he said, John, what I want you to do is I want you to come with me to the Middle East, and we've got a leadership academy there, and I want you to train people in leadership. We have remarkable people coming from all over the Middle East. We also do this in Central Asia. We do this in Southeast Asia. And I'd want you to be on faculty with the thing. And I said, Jim, I said, I'm very, very flattered, but I'm going to decline. And he looked at me like, what? And he said, why? And I said, Jim, I have been lecturing patty cake leadership for the last 13 years, and I can no longer do one more syllable. And he grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, John, this is the real deal. And I said, okay, Jim, and I have a great respect for the guy. I said, okay, Jim, I'll come once. So I went once. That was in 2012. And I've now gone back 23 times. It is the real deal. So I teach and I lead in leadership academies around the world, Central Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and in Moscow. And then we've got this going on. But a few months ago, somewhere in the course of that, I was doing something called gatherings, where I would have people come together for a weekend and we would take one distinction, like the distinction of honor, and we would turn that distinction inside out for a weekend. really have, we had 9 different conversations on honor. Con was one of the ones that came to my gatherings. We formed a relationship. He asked me if I would come into Conscious Accelerator, and I stepped in. And what happened was Ian and Stephen and Holly and Con, and we had a kind of a leadership jazz quintet where we could just start talking, and wow, music was happening, empowerment was happening. A rich thing. We weren't going anywhere with it. Well, Con was, because Con's very directed. But the rest of us were, nah, we're just having it. We were having this incredible thing. But gradually it got shaped more and more and more to where it's Conscious Accelerator, and we have a program to deliver and so on like that. But for me, I know it probably sounds kind of trite, but I'm in it for the music. I'm in it for the jazz quintet. I'm in it for playing with people. Somebody once asked me, Lawrence, said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to have intelligent and witty conversations with bright and attractive people that I could stand.
I love that. I love that. Yeah.
And that's what it became.
And then,
so
that's great. And then if one of the byproducts of those bright, witty conversations is music that others can enjoy, then everyone's winning, and dance and all the things.
Exactly.
It feels like your whole life story has almost been designed, even though you didn't design it. You know, like the dance. You just
no.
don't.
It's very true. It's very true. When I was 19 years old, I knew I wanted to be a dancer, and people would come to me who loved me, and they would say, John, that's nice. You want to dance, you know, but you need to have something solid to fall back on. I think you'll like accounting. I think you'll like selling insurance. And it netted out to people saying to me, John, you have to have a plan. And my response to that from 19 years old was, my experience of people who have a fallback plan is that they end up in their fallback position. So my plan is to have no plan. My plan is to practice virtue, form my character, and unfold my destiny, and see where it takes me.
I love that. And I think on that note, let's wrap up. John, thank you so much for spending time with us today, for sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge, and for sharing your music. I have to say, because this podcast, this show, it's all about helping people find equilibrium, and we've talked about many ideas, and I for one feel much more in equilibrium now than I did when we first started talking. So thank you so much.
Wow, how gracious of you. Well, first of all, let me thank you. The greatest gift that a person can give another person is the gift of their listening. And I feel that I've been listened into existence as something like my best self. And I just really appreciate the quality of the listening that you provide for me, because it allows me to explore aspects of my character. You know, and it allows me to do, in minimalism, there's 5 things. There's health, there's relation, there's your passion, there's discovery, and there's contribution. And what you allowed me to do was to have an artful conversation with a guy where all 5 of those were present. And it was a function of your listening. So thank you very, very much.
No, my great pleasure. And thank you again. Thank you for writing the book. I'd love to just acknowledge you for that book. You know, it's rare that that we get to speak to someone who has written a book that has impacted so many lives. So, congratulations for having the idea for the book, for actually doing the work and making that book happen, and for building on that book and helping so many people to really find an experience level 5. So thank you so much. And
thank you. And as I said before, who knew? Just Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. Just do that. You know,
Absolutely. You can.
I do have a question. Would it be possible for me to get a copy of this?
Of course, yeah, no, absolutely. It's
Yeah, I'd
all
love that.
it's all going to be recorded. So let me wrap up. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your attention and for your time. I know that's something which is very precious, and we will see you next time. Thanks very much. Bye now.